Alright, hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Right off the bat, can anybody tell me what is wrong with this image here? Well, at first, seemingly nothing is wrong aside from the fact that the match graphic is not correct. But also, Rey Mysterio 2009, as well as this arena, SmackDown 2009, is not in the game. And people would be forgiven for not knowing that because, of course, you would assume, oh, well, they were in the last game, why are they not in this one? And that's kind of what I want to talk about today. Not necessarily the removal of things that shouldn't be removed, although that in of itself is entirely accurate. That in itself, you know, should be acknowledged. But more so, like, why do we not have the pieces to put together, like, specific eras in time when it comes to WWE games? It's like they really make it difficult. Obviously, you know, right here, John Cena 2009, Rey Mysterio 2009, two of the biggest names of the 2000s. And yet, I mean, this version of Cena is in the game because it's Cena's game, and this version of Mysterio is not in the game by default because it's not Mysterio's game. And I really just don't agree with that sort of mentality when it comes to this. And so what I think would be more fun and would be more, you know, suited for WWE 2K, even just for one game, but going forward, if at all possible, is something that NBA 2K already has, and that's what is called Eras Mode. Now, I have done sort of like, I guess, bare minimum research on what Eras Mode is as far as NBA 2K is concerned. But from what I have found out, it essentially, it cherry picks what would be considered like a significant point in time. And that's how they define, you know, the start of an era in NBA, and that's where you would go and you'll play your, you know, season, or you'll play, you know, seasons throughout each year of that era. And it's mostly centered around, you know, the major stars. You know, your Michael Jordans and your Kobe's and all that. You know, for wrestling, it's a little bit different. And a lot of people are quick to point out, like, oh, well, you can't have everybody that's ever worked for WWE in a game. And I understand that, but to shut it down so quickly like that, I definitely don't agree with. Just going back to my previous video, which covered Create a Story, and talking about how a lot of people that is essentially what their channel is built on. There's an even more like niche aspect to it, where they are creating a story that has to do with cherry picking a moment in time and recreating that year or that era or what have you. And so there again, that shows that there's an interest in it, and you know, ever since retro versions of wrestlers have been a thing, you know, the majority of audiences have clamored for more of that. Like, oh, this superstar deserves a retro version. Why does he not have it? You know, so and so.
Cena's just trying to weather the storm. Boom, a forearm smack.
And a lot of people have cited both 22 and 23 as like, this is the closest we'll ever get to a Ruthless Aggression WWE game, like a recreation of that. This example right here that I'm doing is more just after that. This is Universe era, PG era. But it's really upsetting because it feels like they're not honoring the legacy that, you know, of these certain superstars. And as well, it's like, you know, not only are you not doing that, but there's certain aspects of it where it's like,
here is your winner.
In 22, for example, you had a little bit more wrestlers on the roster that sort of gave off that Ruthless Aggression era vibe, such as, say, a Jeff Hardy and a John Morrison, and maybe a couple others that I'm forgetting at the moment. But the point is that, like, you know, because they didn't give them retro versions then, you know, they wasted that opportunity. And it's a real shame. So they wasted that opportunity, and now, you know, Edge, who, like, technically has a retro version, but is unfortunately inaccurate due to, like, copyright stuff. But even still, it's like he has only so many looks. You know, he has his original sort of Attitude Era look, and he has like the mid-2000s tights, and he has the 2010 tights. And that, I feel like that's not a lot that we're asking for, you know? But now, you know, we're not gonna have that. We're not gonna have a game that has all of that for Edge, and it's really disappointing. But going back to what I was saying before, you know, how can you have an Eras mode that doesn't have everybody, and you know, what does that kind of look like?
He's looking a little off balance.
Well, I imagine that sort of looks like you have every era, or at least as much as you can fit into, you know, that cycle of, you know, 1 year. And there can and should be overlap between each of the eras. So that should help tremendously. And I would even, I don't expect this, but I would advocate for, like, if they were an active wrestler, like including, you know, if they had made their indie debut, like, in the 90s, let's say, but they didn't debut on WWE until the 2000s or something, I feel like they should still have a retro model and be able to be played as, and or like drafted in that eras mode. But that might be a little far-fetched, admittedly.
He is just reeling from that
But
offense. That is the sort of bloodthirsty offense
going back,
that Randy Orton does so well.
how it would pan out is you would focus on the champions. All of the champions, or not all the champions, but you would focus on the world champions of the era and the IC champions, and perhaps later down the line you can focus on, you know, like United States or things like that, but like third tier championships probably not gonna make the cut, because again that would bloat the roster and make it a little difficult. I wouldn't push necessarily for like accurate cruiserweights and light heavyweights, but that could be something where you play through those years, and if you're playing as someone of that weight class, then, you know, it'll be an extra thing that you can challenge for. And this is something that, of course, you know, it's going to change every year because of the unfortunate nature of things, where, you know, contracts come and go, and even though it's frustrating, that is the reason why a lot of wrestlers will, like, just skip a game or two, and then they come back in the next game. But that'll give us a good base if we focus on, like, the top two titles that we can have an eras mode. So obviously, you know, your Hogans, your Rocks, Austins, Ortons, Batistas, you get a version of them from every era, on top of, you know, just guaranteeing that they would be in the game. And how I sort of envision it working is it should be akin to a superstar mode, in that, yes, you go through the year and, you know, you can play as anybody, but more so it should be more structured, in that you know exactly what you have to do. It should be the closest comparison would be, say, WWF Attitude's career mode, where you just go through the year and there's a ranking system for each of the titles. And through that, of course, you would have you start off at the bottom, you climb the ranks, and would just be climbing them at first, but then you have to defend them against, like, defend your spot against somebody you maybe have already beaten before, or you have to, you know, have like a three-way where it's someone behind you in the rankings and someone ahead of you in the rankings until you finally get to the number 1 slot, which is the champion. And unfortunately, it's like universe mode / superstar mode is kind of set up that way, but it's more so it relies on the random booking structure that, you know, the 2K AI system has, and it doesn't really work out all that great all the time. So even if they could just fix superstar mode to being something more like that, you know, working more like that functionally, and that would be great, and then they could implement Era's mode into that. You know, and then it would also guarantee us, you know, at least most of the major, like, arenas and stuff for each game. And I know that's kind of a big task as well, but, you know, you could have something to where it's like you have a version of, at the very least, like the Big 4 pay-per-views for each era, or each era that they were in. And that, at the very least, would be nice, and it would be less for the community to have to make, and it would be more for us to work with when, you know, community creations inevitably goes down. So, you know, you would climb the ranks, and then you would get the championship, and there would also be sort of a dynamic sort of thing going on where it recognizes historical events, like the date that, say, Bret Hart won the WWE Championship, would be the date in-game that he wins it, and you would get like a little text blurb. You could get maybe like an image or something of when he won it, which would be cool. And that's, you know, just focusing on the world title and the IC title in WWE is like bare minimum. They could, for sure, expand on it more, and I see no reason as to why they couldn't. Just granted that they can get, you know, the licensing deals worked out and stuff, but even if not, you know, it just seems like it would be a fun thing to have as I get ran in on by Tyler Black, because this is 2009. But yeah, there's that. And as well, like, you have a lot of potentially a lot of people that could be joining this game 24 that would lend themselves great to this, just because You know, I don't think that everybody that's been speculated will be added, but just to give like a rundown, you know, Carlito, former U.S.
Here is your winner,
Of course, former WWE champion, Nia Jax, former women's champion, and then you go to the Legends. Alundra Blaze, former women's champion, which if they could, and they definitely should, add women to it, that'll open up the women's roster so much. You know, Billy Graham, Iron Sheik, Ken Shamrock, Mr. Perfect, Great Khali, like these are just the world and mid-card champions, and you open it up further, you know, to like tag champions. You know, you got Mosh and Thrasher, and you know, there's just so much. And again, I know I'm at the end of my rant, and this is an especially like longer rant discussion type video than normal, but I know I'm not going to be able to make it through another match, because I think I've pretty much said everything and I've winded myself. But there's definitely no reason as to why we should not have this mode. It would just be so great, and I think everybody would love it. And so I think that is how they should go about it. You know, you have a strict ranking system, you win the title, you defend it, while simultaneously you go after, you know, other titles, and you try to go through that whole era, you know, just holding on to the titles as long as possible, or winning them as much as possible. And another thing too, the divisions could change dynamically to reflect real life. Like for example, you know, the last time that Bret Hart wins the IC title in real life, should that happen, you know, you change it up, and now he's in the world title division because, you know, he was in that division from that point on. Stuff like that, you know, it would be really neat. Even just like a bare bones, like minuscule version of this, I think would add so much replayability. But anyway, you've looked at angry Triple H, serious Triple H for too long, so I will sign off, and I thank you for making it this far, if you have.